Here's a fact that might surprise you. In 1965 America, the average person drank less than 2 gallons of bottled water per year. Today that number is over 45 gallons. Yet somehow, an entire generation of children stayed hydrated through long summer days without a single plastic bottle in sight. The secret? A green rubber garden hose coiled in the backyard. Do you remember racing across the lawn, chest heaving after a game of tag, and heading straight for that spigot on the side of the house? Do you remember the taste of that first gulp, warm at first, then cool as the fresh water came through? Millions of us did exactly that summer after summer, and we lived to tell the tale. This is just one of those things we did as kids that would horrify parents today. Welcome to Golden Days, USA. Close your eyes for just a moment and let yourself drift back to those golden days of childhood in America. You can almost feel it now, the sun beating down on your shoulders, making your t-shirt stick to your back, the grass beneath your bare feet, cool in the shade and scratchy where the sun had baked it dry. Your throat parched from hours of running, biking, and exploring the neighborhood like we did during life before cell phones and internet. And there it was. That familiar green hose snaked across the lawn like an old friend waiting for you. You remember the squeak of the metal spigot as you turned it, the hiss and sputter as air pushed through. That first burst of water, warm from sitting in the sun, carrying with it the unmistakable taste of rubber in summer. You'd let it run for a few seconds, watching it darken the concrete until the cold water from deep in the pipes finally arrived. Then you'd drink, head tilted back, water splashing your chin and neck, not caring one bit about the mess. Nothing from any bottle has ever tasted quite like that. This was everyday life in 1960s America, pure and simple. This simple ritual became an American institution during the great suburban expansion of the 1950s and 1960s. As families moved out of crowded cities and into new developments with their own yards and driveways, the garden hose became as essential as the family automobile. Those were the days of post-war America when optimism filled every household. Fathers watered their carefully tended lawns on Saturday mornings, perhaps after watching Saturday morning cartoons with the kids. Mothers filled kiddie pools and rinsed off muddy shoes. And children, left to roam freely during those long summer days, discovered that the humble hose was the most reliable drinking fountain in the neighborhood. It made perfect sense during the golden age of the American dream. Water was trusted. It came from municipal systems that had been built with post-war confidence and American engineering. Nobody questioned it. Nobody worried. Parents had bigger things on their minds, like building careers, raising families, and creating the prosperous communities they had dreamed about during harder times. The garden hose wasn't just a convenience. It was a symbol of abundance, of freedom, and of a classic American childhood spent outdoors where adventure waited around every corner. This was what life was really like in the 1950s and beyond. Picture a typical July afternoon in 1972 America. The screen door slams behind you at 8:30 in the morning, right after a bowl of cereal that cost your mother about 15 cents. She tells you to be home when the streetlights come on, and that's the last instruction you'll receive for the next 10 hours. This was how kids grew up in the 1970s, with freedom that seems unimaginable today. You meet up with the neighborhood kids. Maybe there are 5 of you, maybe 8. Ages range from 7 to 12, and the older ones keep an eye on the younger ones without anyone ever asking them to. That's just how it worked back when neighborhoods were real communities. The day unfolds without schedules or supervision. You ride bikes to the creek on your Schwinn bicycle, a treasure that cost about $40 at the local department store. You build a fort out of fallen branches. You play baseball in the vacant lot at the end of Maple Street, using an old broomstick for a bat and arguing about whether that last hit was fair or foul. These were the things every kid did before the internet existed. By 2 o'clock, the temperature has climbed past 90 degrees. Everyone is dusty, sweaty, and desperately thirsty. But nobody runs home for a juice box. because juice boxes don't exist yet, and nobody has a water bottle clipped to their belt, because that would seem strange and unnecessary. This was playing outside until dark, the way baby boomers and Gen X grew up. Instead, you head to the nearest house. Maybe it's Tommy's place, or maybe it's the Johnson family 2 doors down. It doesn't matter. Every yard has a hose, and every hose is available to any child who needs a drink. You take turns at the spigot. The first person lets the water run until it's cold, then drinks their fill. They pass it to the next kid who does the same. Sometimes you spray each other, laughing and shrieking as the cold water hits sun-warmed skin. Sometimes a parent glances out the kitchen window, waves, and goes back to whatever they were doing. They don't worry. There's nothing to worry about. By the time the streetlights flicker on around 8:30, you've probably drunk from 3 or 4 different hoses in 3 or 4 different yards. You've also scraped your knee, eaten a peanut butter sandwich that sat in the sun for 2 hours, and shared a package of baseball cards that cost a dime. Later, you might enjoy TV dinners with the family while watching your favorite shows, a perfect ending to a perfect day of vintage American childhood. Maybe you stopped at the penny candy store on the way home, spending a nickel on your favorite sweets. Or perhaps you passed by the local drive-in theater where families gathered on weekend nights. These were the simple pleasures of growing up in small-town America. Tell me, friend, which house in your neighborhood had the coldest hose water? Do you remember those lazy summer days of the 1960s and 1970s? I'd love to hear your memories in the comments below. Somewhere along the way, things began to shift. Like so many aspects of old-fashioned American life, the simple act of drinking from a garden hose became something to question rather than celebrate. It happened gradually, as most changes do. In the 1980s America, bottled water started appearing on store shelves, marketed first as a European luxury and then as a practical necessity. By the 1990s, children carried plastic bottles to soccer practice, and parents began reading articles about lead content in older pipes and chemicals in garden hose materials. The concerns weren't entirely unfounded. Some hoses made before regulations tightened did contain materials we now know to be less than ideal. Brass fittings sometimes contained lead. Certain plastics released chemicals when heated by the sun. But here's what's worth remembering, and this is the truth about how we really grew up. Most of us drank from those hoses for years, even decades, and we were fine. Our parents drank from them too. The exposure was occasional, not constant, and the water itself, flowing from well-maintained municipal systems, was as clean as any water in the world. What we lost wasn't just a drinking fountain. We lost something less tangible, but perhaps more important. We lost the assumption that the world was basically safe. We lost the freedom to let children roam without constant supervision. We lost the easy trust between neighbors who shared their yards and their hoses without a second thought. This is truly what happened to the simple American life that we once knew. Today, a child drinking from a garden hose might prompt a worried phone call or a social media post. Not because the water is necessarily dangerous, but because the very act seems reckless by modern standards. Life before technology and social media operated on different rules built on trust and common sense rather than fear and constant vigilance. And maybe that says more about how we've changed than about any change in the water itself. When we look back at everyday moments from America's past, we see a world that trusted its children to be resilient, its neighbors to be kind, and its water to be clean. So was drinking from the garden hose safe? For millions of American children across several generations, the answer is a simple yes. We drank that water summer after summer, year after year, and we grew up strong and healthy. The taste of warm rubber giving way to cold, clean water remains one of the most vivid sensory memories of 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s childhood. But beyond the question of safety lies something more meaningful. That garden hose represents a way of life that no longer exists, one that valued freedom, trusted neighbors, and believed that children could navigate the world with minimal interference. It represents parents who understood that scraped knees heal, that a little dirt builds character, and that the best childhoods happen outdoors, beyond the reach of schedules and screens. Those long summer days, punctuated by trips to the nearest spigot, taught us independence, resilience, and the simple pleasure of quenching a hard-earned thirst. No plastic bottle could ever replace that. This was the real American childhood experience that shaped an entire generation. The garden hose is still there, coiled in backyards across America. The water still runs cold if you let it flow for a moment, and the memory of drinking from it connects us to the golden era of American history, a time when life was simpler, trust came easier, and summer seemed to last forever. These are the forgotten memories of growing up in America that deserve to be celebrated and remembered. Thank you for sharing these memories with us today. If this brought back precious memories of simpler times in America, please like and subscribe to Golden Days USA for more heartwarming journeys into our shared past.